Welcome to Players Only, your backstage pass behind the scenes of today's PC and video game industry. I'm Scott Steinberg, and with so much choice for gamers these days between iPhones, social networks, and digital download services, it's almost enough to make anyone's head short circuit. Co-host Haley Bright and I explore how these trends are changing the game.
The most exciting trend right now in the games business is digital distribution and what that means for game content. You know, the fact that there's 4,000 games available on Apple's iPod App Store, right? And some of them are really great. The fact that, you know, Xbox Live Community Games is opening the Xbox 360 up to people, you know, to garage developers who want to spend $100 to develop a game. If you look at how the technology has so profoundly affected the art in just a short span of time, it's really fascinating.
Anything that can be distributed digitally probably should be digitally distributed because it cuts down costs, it makes it far more accessible, it makes things a lot more efficient. I mean, I still like retail, I still like having my physical box in many cases, but I like the option that I can find games that would never make it at retail online.
Digital distribution is the future, I think. We're going to get everything, movies, television shows, video games, off of the internet.
Personally, I love on a Saturday being able to go to a place like Best Buy and pick up a game and like unwrap the shrink wrap. I mean, I was the kid sniffing the instruction booklet, right? But that said, you look at the quality of games on Xbox Live, such as Shadow Complex, raising the bar. You look at things like Steam, you look at the streaming Netflix, and increasingly it's getting to the point where it's like, I have this here. I can just queue this all up and do it. Why do I need to clutter up my place with a bunch of stuff? Why do I need to go to the store?
Digital distribution has a long way to go. I think we're just starting to see what digital distribution can do, but the fact is that it's not really available on the big consoles, unless you're talking about a relatively small game.
In the long run, digital distribution, it will benefit most of the publishers, but for the first 5 years, it's definitely going to be a very bumpy road with a lot of trial and error.
I'd like to think at some point we'll free up game developers to not have to always produce these 3 or 4 year titles that cost them millions of dollars to put out, and instead focus on like what Rockstar's doing, do these episodes, and still make, you know, turn a game from being just a single experience into being a platform that can deliver new experiences.
Grand Theft Auto Lost and Damned is a $20 microtransaction. I mean, it's a download. And Madden football in 10 years will be the same $60, but they'll charge you $1 a week for player updates. Consumers have to brace themselves that games aren't going to get better and better and better for the same price. They're going to pay for it one way or another.
Speaking of price, what about free-to-play and flash games? You know, those little titles that play in your web browser, as well as services like OnLive and Gaikai, which promise to stream games right to your TV or desktop.
The future is actually the flash game business. And the reason for that is today, flash is the stigma of being kind of weak, simple games. So what we've been investing into is the concept of the entire game running offline. So imagine you have virtual servers playing the whole game for you, which means Flash isn't having to do crazy stuff. You can play on a lower performance computer. The entire game runs on scalable servers at our end, which means we can add more and more and more and more servers to run your game for you. So you can basically play on hardware you can't afford.
It expands the audience. It allows people who wouldn't have been able to afford a $60 console game and a $300 console in the first place the opportunity to play games which may not have the same graphical fidelity, but often do have the depth.
It's the Google model for games. Basically, Google one day said, advertising is going to be, you pay as much as you want to pay. And it's actually better for the gamers, because the way it works in free-to-play is the gamer can play as long as they like for free, which means they only pay for games they love.
And if there's one platform that users can't get enough of, it's cellular handsets like the iPhone. Will they continue to explode in popularity?
The mobile gaming business has enjoyed fairly steady growth over the last several years. I think the iPhone is probably going to do quite a bit for the mobile gaming industry, just because games are now even more accessible.
I personally have bought more iPhone games on a whim for anywhere from 99 cents to $4.99 than I've ever bought on any mobile platform before. Why? Because it's convenient, they're cute, and they're fun. And, I don't have to put my credit card number in every time because I have an iTunes account.
All of these devices are not a fad. They are indicative of a new future. And the compute power of the next iPhone is going to exceed the power of the Xbox in last generation. And that's just going to continue to compound.
I just don't see the potential. The best-selling game download on the iPhone was Super Monkey Ball, and it still hasn't hit 500,000 downloads. So if you're Sega and you're making $6 of profit and you sell 500,000, that's only $3 million. You're certainly not going to spend $10 million making a cell phone game. That means the experience will never be as robust as the experience of a PC game or a console game, so the games will never be as good.
Maybe so, but what about social networks like Facebook and Vivo? There doesn't seem to be any shortage of players there. Is it just a fad?
I don't think games for social networks are a fad. Who has the biggest brain has now been played by more than 15 million people. But perhaps what's even more impressive than that, it's been played over 500 million times.
You gotta go where the fans are, where your audience of consumers are actually looking for content. And you look at the iPhone, you look at online space, you look at social networking. These are where the next generation of consumers are going for entertainment.
Social gaming and playing with friends is not really anything new, but what is new is that the social networks have launched platforms which allow us as game developers to create games for people to play together, which quite frankly emotionally is a more interesting reason to play games.
Facebook could almost become like the next console. If they have an ability to sort of have a graphical engine that powers Facebook, that social networking, which is so strong and compelling, and you're like, holy shit, I haven't talked to that guy in 15 years, and now I want to play some sort of adventure game with them. I think that can help those people compete with sort of the larger conglomerate of game companies.
Years from now, we'll just see it as one part of the fabric of gaming and not as this sort of separate, different animal. Some of the distinctions that in the past we've used to categorize games become sort of a non-distinction as they just get sort of internalized. And I think social gaming will be just one of those distinctions.
And how about MMOs, the last bastion for wizards and warriors? Are even those destined to change too?
I think MMOs are a little bit of a crossroads, honestly. When you look worldwide at kind of the audience penetration in terms of Korean RPGs and Chinese games and even games that aren't traditional RPGs but are now about dancing or golf or whatever, I think we're seeing a real kind of sea change away from the high-end productions and towards these more casual experiences.
It used to be, hey, I'm going to be a dwarf and I'm going to carry an axe, I'm going to go kill a dragon, and that was an MMO. But now, with casual games, with cell phone games, with everything else, what we're really realizing is MMO isn't really a genre of games, it's a category of games.
A lot of the design is kind of like a mall where you go into a mall and there's a lot of people there. It doesn't mean you want to talk to any of those people, but you want to feel like you're part of the social fabric. And that's the way a lot of MMOs have been designed, and that's the way a lot of people play MMOs. But there's also a lot of people that want to be social, and MMO creators are now waking up to the fact that there are a lot of people that do want to talk to everyone in the mall.
And there's not necessarily the onus of, hey, you have to have been a geek growing up to understand what you're playing. Now, these are games for everybody.
All right, so things are a little different now. But has all this changed for the better?
In the old days, if you wanted to play a video game, you had to get into your car, drive to an arcade, and pay money to play. Then one day they came out with consoles and computers they could take to your house. So for me, the more platforms you had to play on, the better, because each platform brings its own unique way, a unique style of game.
As long as we continue to change and sort of broaden our horizons, that's a good thing. So what we need less of is sort of games that are exactly like the ones we're making now, and what we need more of is games that aren't.
If I'm doing something that is bound to the chair and the office, that is the past. If I'm doing something that's with me as I'm on the go, that's the future. And so we're going to see these devices. I believe that we're very close to seeing the last generations of console hardware.
Still, tomorrow you'll always have ways to play. We'll see you next week on Players Only.